What's on your mind, Digby Scott?
The thing that's on my mind is change dragons.
Yeah, so it's worth saying at this point that Digby and I exchanged a brief text message before this conversation, and I went, here's a couple of things I've been thinking about. What have you been thinking about? And Digby said, change dragons. And I said, dragons? And just got, yep. So please, Digby Scott, what the hell are you on about?
Happy to enlighten you. So change dragons, it's like there be dragons, right? It's like when you're on a quest, when you're on a mission, you're going to face some dragons that you're going to have to overcome if you're going to achieve anything worthwhile, right? And where this came from is, I don't know about you, but I've been in heaps of conversation this week with people in all sorts of organisations, all sorts of levels, and this is sort of slowly growing, I don't know if the word's optimism, but actually there's been some really good stuff that's been coming out of this remote working thing, right? Yeah. This whole crisis-y thing. And actually I would love it if when we go back into the building, that we could keep that.
How do we keep this? I've had a bunch of these this week too. We are so on the same level. How do we keep this?
How do we keep this good stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I was talking with a bunch of the Changemakers tribe last night. We did a drinks thing, and I just lobbed the question in. Cool, yeah, there's all this optimism. So what are the change dragons? And same response as you had. What the hell is that? but it's like, what are the things that might squash this? What might squash this optimism of, oh, man, we'd love to keep these remote meetings going and have lots of flexibility. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, what are the change dragons? The idea that if you can identify what the change dragons are and anticipate them, you might be able to head them off at the pass or get strategic about how you deal with them.
Okay,
right?
I like this. I've got two things to say about this. One of them is how many of the dragons are out there and how many of the dragons are in here.
Oh, right? Mate. Yep.
But the second one is I love this. I've been having the exact same conversations with people, which is we've just realised there's stuff we've had to do that now we want to keep and we're worried we're going to lose it. And my answer every time is embed it quickly. Change your systems so that when you go back, it has to be done this way. Like you have to embed this while people still care. Because as soon as the enthusiasm and the memory is gone,
I agree.
It's over.
I agree. I ran a webinar this morning on Experiment Now, and my framing at the start was there's this window of opportunity that's a bit like platform 9 3/4 in Harry Potter, right? It's like it opens, you jump through it, and then it closes again, right? Yes. And it's going to like close over, and we're going to be left on the platform going, oh, well, now that actually happened with the Kaikoura earthquakes.
Yeah.
There was like all this, like we all had to work from home for a bit. It's really cool. And then it sort of all went back to how it used to be. Yeah, like let's embed it fast. Let's experiment and capture the data about what works, because you can't argue with the data. And if you can have it, like actually this actually increases productivity, whatever it is, then, and if you can mobilize enough people around that, then you get some sort of, oh, cool. Yeah, let's do that. This is the
and
new
then like
normal.
what can it trigger, right?
The new
so
normal.
Don't say that. Don't say pivot either. If you say pivot, I'm ending the meeting.
But aren't we having to pivot into the new normal?
I'm out.
I'm
out. Oh God, I'm so into this conversation. So I reckon there's a couple of things, and I reckon one is it's not just like, hey, working from home's cool. Like, whoop de shit, half of us work from home. It's like, what's the new stuff that we've had to do and the new ways we've had to work that we want to keep, right? And so I had this great wine on Wednesday night with
a wine,
or just a wine. With Mark Sowden, the government statistician, and we were talking about how what this has done for stats is they've got all these new data sources, right? All the stuff that like private sector didn't used to want to give them, they've got it now because they had to have it.
Yeah.
And also they're having to churn stuff out like daily, weekly instead of weekly, monthly, quarterly. And they're like, shit, this is great. People love this. This is the moment for data. How do we keep this so that our statisticians still want to keep doing this and that our customers are still keen and that we're still doing that? How do we keep bits of that now?
Well, actually, what I picked up from what you're saying is that there's a bigger question than just flexible work, and it's about actually new ways of just getting stuff done. And I reckon we want to go beyond. I think flexible working is like the framing for a conversation that's about bigger stuff, right? Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So I think there's a lot more conversation. But coming back to the Change Dragons, I think I asked this group last night about it, and it was like, oh, well, people in power is obviously one, right? People who are it was interesting, the word, scared of the word autonomy kept coming up. It's like people get paralysed, people in power not wanting to give autonomy. Now, I think I'm optimistic going, I think hopefully that's a small subset of anyone in power who calls the shots. But this idea that if autonomy is then taken away again because we've been given a lot of it, that will be a massive change dragon, right? So that's one. There was another one about kind of the rest of the world is still in the shit. So for us to try and rush too far ahead and feeling like, oh no, we can't do that because actually what about the rest of the world? That to me is an internal change dragon, right? That's rubbish.
That's all in here. I hate that.
I totally agree.
I've heard a little bit of that this week from local government saying we don't want to be seen to be doing well or doing exciting new stuff or spending on anything because our communities are suffering, and that's not empathy. And I'm going, no. Your community doesn't need you to suffer with them. They need you to lead. Yep,
absolutely. Be a shining light. Be a different way of being that you can say, look, we can be like this, right? This is not about arrogance. This is just about, look, actually, there's some stuff we're doing that seems to be working. Would you like some help?
Yeah, you can lead with compassion, but people are looking for leadership, not for someone else to sit next to them and cry. There's enough of that.
Now is the time to lead. Now is the time to lead. And now is the time to experiment. Now is the time to anticipate change dragons and have the conversation about, so how do we get around these change dragons that we might be facing?
Isn't the autonomy one interesting? Because when we think about the crisis stuff, because we talked last week about what happens when you shift out of crisis mode. And what's really good about crisis mode is that you make fast decisions and you empower other people, right? Because you're like, I've just got to focus on what I'm doing. I just trust my teams are going to get on with it. And you've got this environment of permission where everyone's trusted to get on and do their jobs. But when things get murky again, we revert back to our defaults. And if our default has been to hold things close or keep an eye, or if it feels too risky to keep running at the pace we've been running at, even managers who aren't afraid to give autonomy, I think just start wanting to just have oversight of things that isn't necessarily helpful.
Yeah, so there's so much that we could reshift here. You know, the thing I've been saying to people is capture your stories.
Yeah.
Not just the data. Yeah. Get them on video so others can watch it, and I think if you can get a bit of a movement going of here's what's possible.
Yeah.
And you have some champions around those stories, that changes the fabric.
Bright spot silver lining stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're doing in Fast Forward, which is the change program that I do, which is where we don't just do the change stuff. We capture the stories of the people who've done it, and then we share that with everybody else who works at that agency so that they can see what people just like them have been able to do. And that is so powerful. You're so right on that. I like that.
Yeah, and the just like me, I think, is the key bit, isn't it? It's so this isn't something that has to go up through some chain of command and then down to me. It's like, I can just do that. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of optimism, and my fear is that that optimism, the window which we can push that optimism through, is going to close soon. I was actually talking to one agency yesterday who was saying, I reckon we've got about till the end of May to really make some good change stick.
And the window
I think you're right.
Because you have 8 weeks. 8 weeks is the magic time to get something up and have something tangible that you have been able to prove. And it doesn't have to be the end of it. It just has to be something tangible you can grab onto. You've generally got 8 weeks. So if this is week 4 and we've got another 4 weeks to go, that sounds about right.
Yep, so I think it's about, so what is the experiment that you're running now that you want to capture some stories and some quantitative data around that has some sort of benefit beyond just for you, right? I think that's the message. And if you can be really deliberate about that, then you're in a really good position to make it stick. So I'm excited.
The question I think that we'd be asking everybody else is, if you've used 4 of your 8 weeks and you've got 4 weeks left to experiment and put something new in, what are you going to do with the rest of your window?